The New Testament is a Swindle, Part 4, by Humongous. Not all Jesus Christ quotes are so potentially perfidious to humans. Some are just stupid. For example, take the following. Quote, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them." Unquote. Actually, all kinds of birds store things in barns. These things are referred to as nests, and 5-year-old kids comprehend this. How come Jesus, an alleged all-knowing entity, didn't? Moreover, numerous species of birds gather food, and also store that in their nests. And who can overlook the blatant misogyny ubiquitous in the New Testament, as well as the Old? You're less likely to see a doubleheader in NHL hockey featuring the same two teams than you are to find women treated fairly in the Bible. Why should Jesus, our main character, break tradition? As such, direct from the man himself. Quote, "It has been said, 'Anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, causes her to become an adulteress, and anyone who marries the divorced woman commits adultery." Unquote. What in the holy fuck? You divorce some chick, and as a result, she perpetrates adultery? I'll bet everything I have, which is pretty much my dong and some memories, whoever wrote the above quote had a pair of balls, a Y chromosome, and non-milk producing nipples. Yet another Jesus quote, leading one to deduce healthy teeth are more prevalent in the Deep South than intelligence was in the head of the author of this gem. Quote, "Likewise, every good tree bears fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit." Unquote. Wrong again. Good trees yield bad fruit all the time. Who hasn't picked a rotten apple? Shit left out in the elements is bound to go bad after a while. And who doesn't believe in talking clouds? One would be a fool not to. Millions of photographs, tens of thousands of videos, innumerable testimonies from pilots, air traffic controllers, government officials, astronauts, and scientists validating the veracity of UFOs of an otherworldly nature. Still, a prodigious portion of the populace don't believe in unidentified flying enigmas of intelligent non-human design. That said, a number of these same folk have no doubt a fucking cloud said the following to Peter in the Bible. Quote, "This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Unquote. Who wouldn't want to read the timeless tale of Joseph, Jesus' cuckold dad, to their children? Joseph, who refused to have sex with his future bride Mary during her pregnancy, as was traditional thanks to a Christian mandate, after a guy named God knocked her up. Joseph, a caring husband-to-be who considered having his wife stoned to death, also customary due to a Christian decree, upon determining she'd become pregnant by another. What does any of this have to do with saving humanity? Not a fucking thing. Keeping humans from becoming extinct on this planet would, of course, denote a discussion of vertical farming, so people in the future don't starve to death. Perhaps a transitioning from nuclear and fossil fuel for pending generations to clean, safe energy sources, so we don't all die from fucking cancer. Of course, such isn't mentioned in the Bible. Instead, we get some soap opera about a potential wife who became pregnant without having sex and her naive husband who stuck by her while she popped out someone else's kid. That's beneficial in stopping those earthbound asteroids from exterminating our species on this planet? More lunacy, this time from Matthew 3:16. Quote, As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." Unquote. What the above tells us is that Jesus saw his own Spirit and spoke to himself, since the Bible elucidates Jesus isn't solely God's Son, but also God. And you thought fine print on insurance contracts was confusing. In current society, folks asserting to see their own spirits and spending excessive time conversing with themselves are often locked away in mental institutions. In Matthew 3:8, the devil, quote, took Jesus to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give to you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, 'Worship the Lord your God and serve him only.'" Unquote. If Jesus is God, and God created everything, why would the devil tempt Jesus with Jesus' own creation? What's more, if you produced this entire universe, why would you be enticed by meager strips of land on a speck of dust in an immense cosmic ocean, all of which you own? Mind you, I haven't even finished breaking down the Gospel of Matthew. If I did take this baby to term, I'd also expose the Gospels of Mark, Luke, and Juan. Luckily, all these portions of the New Testament center around the same story, i.e., Jesus' fictitious life on earth, his nonsensical teachings, his death, thankfully, and resurrection. Hence, I don't have to cut a path through Mark, Luke, and John. If I did, you'd probably be swallowing the barrel of a handgun by now, or pouring milk in a bowl filled with sleeping pills, spoon in hand. I apologize for the laborious nature of all this, but I didn't write the New Testament. I just struggled to read it, on the verge of sucking a tailpipe with every painful word. So Jesus purportedly speaks to the masses in what's termed the Sermon on the Mount. Part of this oratory, Matthew 5:9, goes like this, quote, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God." Unquote. The above means all presidents are damned to hell. You don't order wars, force people to fight each other, and proliferate weapons manufacturing, yet still refer to yourself as a peacemaker. Moreover, all soldiers, according to the above decree, are doomed as well. You don't carry a loaded gun to work, prepared to murder on command, and still call yourself someone who pledges amity. In Matthew 6 through 6:3, Jesus states, quote, "Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by men. I tell you the truth," there it fucking is again, "they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." Unquote. Shortly after asserting the above, Jesus embarks on JC, the Middle Eastern tour. During this interim, he heals a bunch of sick folk, causes paralyzed people to walk again, and rids dudes of demons, all almost invariably in front of colossal crowds. Chris Angel might as well have hired on as Christ's opening act, as the two could have performed to sold-out arenas. In Matthew 6:9, Jesus lays down the rules. Quote, "This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." Unquote. If God is omniscient, what's the point in praying at all? It's not as though he, she, or it is going to change its mind because you, a speck of dust in the scheme of things, came to a personal revelation it hadn't considered. According to Christianity, we're talking God here, the all-knowing who has contemplated everything. Thus, you would accomplish more, however adverse, by jacking off into the wind and severing your sinful hand afterward than by praying. Jesus declares, quote, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like the pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him." Unquote. If he already knows what you need, what's the fucking point in asking? Isn't it a waste of time? Then again, that's what the Bible is all about. Wasting time while evil, the powers we've allowed to be, slaughter us in droves. Since God knows what you need, it doesn't matter what the fuck you ask him for. He already has his mind set on what he's given you. If you believe you can change that, then you think you know better than God. At that point, billions of Christians will condemn you for being an arrogant blasphemer. But wait, it's the Christians who are asking God for stuff in the first place. So they'd be condemning themselves. Circuitous insanity, isn't it? So we shouldn't spend a protracted period praying? Guess the missionaries of charity, Mother Teresa's cult, who pray for hours every day, negated to read this portion of the New Testament. What's more, there's no difference between praying and begging. The two are synonymous in the dictionary. If you have to continually beg a higher power for things, you're in a master-slave relationship. You'll always be groveling, and that's one sorry-ass excuse for an existence. What's the point in continuing this diatribe? If you've listened this far and haven't already acknowledged the New Testament is unexpurgated insanity, subterfuge, and a tool for control, you never will. I can continue this obvious expose of such, but as Thomas Paine stated in The Age of Reason, quote, "What is it the Bible teaches us? Rapine, cruelty, and murder. What is it the Testament teaches us? To believe that the Almighty committed debauchery with a woman engaged to be married, and the belief of this debauchery is called faith. As to the fragments of morality that are irregularly scattered in these books, they are the natural dictates of conscience, and the bonds by which society is held together, and without which it cannot exist. The Testament teaches nothing new on this subject." Unquote. In short, if you don't inherently understand that it's cruel and detrimental to murder, rape, and steal, then you're a fucking psychopath. And psychopaths are folks anyone would do their best to steer clear of. If you require a couple thousand-page tome to elucidate these facts I just imparted in 2 sentences, then there's a serious problem with that publication as well. Like Paine, I hunger to read something else, something of value to humanity. Hence, I'm closing the book on the Bible, New Testament and Old.